Have you ever thought about why people don't buy from you? I mean, really obsessed over that. Why, if you have a product or service that is so valuable, then why would anyone ever say no? Right? Why, if your proposition is that your service and your product has the potential to transform their lives and transform their futures, and they still say no, why would that be? And so this is something that I obsessed with over for years, and I began to reverse engineer the process, right, to get people to say yes. And what, because I obsess over, okay, well, what do they need to know? Right, that's one piece. That's logical certainty. But what do they need to believe? And what do they need to feel? Right, because ultimately it's emotional certainty that leads to people saying yes. Now you can do everything perfectly. You can have built, in the workshop formula, I talk about how we need to build rapport, trust, and credibility early, how we need to handle objections at the beginning before we even, start to move forward, really, and how we get permission to move forward by first getting into agreement. After we get into agreement, we handle objections, we get permission to for people to suspend their beliefs just for that evening, right? Just for a short period, right? So that now you have the fullest audience available, and then build the logical emotional certainty. You can do all of that, and you can get to the close and give people the dive back into the emotional certainty, right? And give them the logical certainty and the uh, clarity around the process, the pricing, the timing, all those things, and give them an offer that's good for tonight only. To give you have that the FOMO component. You give them a picture of what the next steps are, so that they don't have any anxiety around what's next. You can do everything perfectly and still have people say no. Now, if you don't do those things, if you don't follow the workshop formula, then you're going to have a lot of people say no because you didn't do those things. You didn't build rapport, trust, and credibility. You didn't slay the objections. You didn't get into agreement. You didn't give them the logical certainty they need and the emotional certainty they have to believe that your product, and your service are the next best thing in their life and the thing that's going to get them what they want, which is the transformation that they're desiring. Right? Again, because what they don't want is information. They don't want information, they want transformation. And so if you're able to do all those, if you miss any of those things, then yeah, you're not going to have everyone available to even say yes. But now let's take it a step further, right? If you go back and study the workshop formula and really apply it to your process and your information, your workshop, how you present it. But now let's go a step further. Why would people say no? Well, there could be some very real logistical reasons. Maybe you have a location-based service, and maybe they're moving next week, right? Maybe they're just in town for the week visiting a relative, right? There can be some very real reasons behind why they say no. It can be logistical reasons. It could be financial, but financial isn't typically always the reason. And Jordan Belfort, from the um, Way of the Wolf of Wall Street, great sales trainer, says this in that book. He says that financial objections are almost always a smokescreen for lack of certainty, right? Emotional certainty around your product, and your brand, right? So then now there can be real financial objections, just they just don't have the ability. But more often than not, I find that we didn't give them a clear enough picture of what the finances really look like and made it digestible in a way that they can process in that moment, right? If, for example, if your service is going to be, say, $5,000 or $6,000, over a course of time, meaning they don't have to pay all that up front, but you tell them, so, to work with me, it's going to be $5,000, right? Or you just say that outright, well, that's harder to digest mentally, and than to say it's going to be $500 over the course of 12 months, right? So That's very different. And people, so it's how we present it that also is going to determine whether or not someone is going to say yes or not. So it's not, in that case, it's not finances. It wasn't finances that stopped people. It was how the finances were presented. Right? Was it digestible in a way that people psychologically and emotionally could say yes? Right. The other thing is, when we're talking about, if our first next step is just finding out, having a discovery call or having a first visit to find out and discover what's going on, to see if they're a great fit or not, if they have the problem that you can solve, then the focus of our close should be on finding out, to see exactly what's going on, right? Not about the full. So then it's all about just the next step. That's when we use minimizers. Let's just find out, right? And it's only X to find out. It's not the full 6,000. It's not even the 500 per month. It's just that next step of finding out. So are you building that into it? But still, people can still say no. So that comes down to sometimes their own limiting beliefs. And we talked a lot about limiting beliefs in this series, and how that stops us as presenters from being present and available to give people the best versions of ourselves so that they can, say yes to us. But other people have their limiting beliefs, that they're not good enough, that they're not deserving, right? That the you know moms are a great example of this, that they put everyone else first, right? They put their whole families first. But what if you framed it in a way, if you address that objection, because basically these limiting beliefs are objections. So what, and you have to conquer those too. What limiting beliefs does your target market have that you need to overcome also, right? You have to overcome your own limiting beliefs, and now you also have to overcome their limiting beliefs and help them overcome them, right? So for that mom who puts everyone else first, it's talking to that pain point. Hey, listen, we realize that, all the moms here, you're so used to putting everyone else first, right? And so that's why we absolutely stress that this is that time, that moment where it's time to put you first, because well, and we know this, but we know that you really deep down know that when you put yourself first, you actually are putting your family first, right? One, that's what they want for you. Two, we can only help those we love to the degree that we are good for ourselves. If we're not healthy, if we're not happy, if we're not at our best, then there's no way we can possibly give our optimal for the ones we love, right? So that's why this moment is really about taking that step, right? Just to find out, to see how we can help to put you first, right? So that's how we can address that limiting belief. You know, what about, not being good enough, right? Or, that's a deep one. That could be, if you're giving, really understand what are the limiting beliefs of your target market? What are some common ones? Now, we know the common ones of society, so those would be good to work into your presentation. But specifically, what are some of the limiting beliefs? That there's not enough time, maybe, right? That there's that it's going to take too long. Like, there's so many different limiting beliefs that you could be addressing. So next step, dive back into the workshop formula. Understand that if people are saying no, especially a large percentage of the room, then it's likely that you haven't followed the principles of the workshop formula that build that rapport, trust, and credibility, build the logical and emotional certainty so that people can say yes, right? Because if your service is that valuable and has the potential to transform their lives, then it means that we haven't done a good enough job to and address those pieces, or we're just not aware. But now you're aware, and so now it's time to go back again and revisit it. And how can I strengthen all those things and build into all those elements, those principles into my own presentation to get as many people to say yes? And now, how can I dive into their limiting beliefs and build that in as well? I guarantee if you do that, you will get even more people saying yes. And ultimately, that's what it's all about: transforming lives and increasing your business and your potential as well. All right, take care.